I know what you're thinking. Looks familiar. Let me tell you though, it's something very different. This is the new driver lineup from Mizuno, the JPX1 and the JPX1 Select, and in today's video I'm going to tell you everything you need to know about them. So firstly, why JPX1 and JPX1 Select? Think of it as this way, there's two head profiles and they're going to fit two different profiles of player. Now before we even talk about Select and JPX1, the first thing you'll notice that when you actually put it in behind the golf ball before seeing that blue face is actually what you see from the top profile. A very contrasting look from previous years gone by in Mizuno drivers. Very clean is how I'm going to describe this driver. When you see the top, the crown profile of it, we're not seeing that sort of blocky carbon spot and then the blacked out top line. What we see now is a very clean top line with just a little JPX logo. When you get the Select head in behind the golf ball, what you will notice is the driver profile looks a little bit more sat up, a little bit more smaller, a little bit more squat. The back edge of the club seems to be sat up off the ground a little bit more, and overall just looks a little bit more compact. Now that differs when you actually get the JPX1 in. This looks a little bit more forgiving, I would say. The profile looks a little bit more stretched of the head, the back edge seems to hug the ground a little bit more, and overall it just looks like it's got a little bit more space to actually get the ball on the club face here. Probably the one that if you're looking for a little bit more confidence, this would be the one that you would want to get in behind here and give you that inspiring feeling as you stood up to the driver. One thing to note about both these driver models as well, whether it be the Select or the One, is the cleanliness underneath. No big blocks out of carbon, looks really clean, and then just has one singular weight port in both the drivers that can't be moved. Now aside from looks, what I would say about the two different models of head is that the JPX1 Select is for that faster swinging golfer, that person who's looking for a slightly lower spin rate and ultimately is finding the middle of the club a little bit more. As where the JPX1, it's still going to be quick off the face, it's just going to give you a little bit more spin, and if you are getting a little bit more toe to heely and you're not quite finding the centre every single time, you're just going to get a little bit more forgiveness out of the JPX1 versus the Select. So now we know a little bit about both those drivers there and the cleanliness in terms of looks. What about the technology? Firstly, there's that, we're going to get to it in a second, but as we see from a lot of drivers now, we see the composite carbon crown. This allows weight to be moved around the golf club head to allow for more stability, i.e. more forgiveness, and also can help create more speed throughout the driver. One weight port at the back here, that isn't changeable. It just sits there, you can't move it around for a fade or a draw. Then we get to the big story about this driver, something that makes it look like another driver, but it isn't. This is not carbon, it's something called nano alloy. So what is nano alloy, I hear you ask? It isn't carbon, it's actually something that Mizuno are already using in other products, baseball bats and tennis rackets. It is an alloy, and what it does is basically stores energy at the moment of impact. So when that ball's coming in, instead of it losing energy and not getting the ultimate ball speed out of it, it's able to store more energy, thus creating faster ball speeds, especially on those mist-centered strikes. So toe and heel strikes, you're going to see it come out quicker. And I think the biggest thing is actually when you hit the golf ball. Like I said, it's familiar to some other drivers that we've seen on the market that do have the carbon face, and the big thing that I think with those clubs is that when you hit them, you get that dull sound. It almost feels a little bit dead. It doesn't feel maybe like a conventional driver, as where when hitting JPX1, if you just listen to the sound of this one, You still get that metal-like sound when it's struck. It doesn't sound dull, it doesn't sound dead. First actual shots that I hit with this in Atlanta, I was very surprised because of that. I thought when seeing it, my brain straight away went to carbon, and then when hitting it, it actually feels a little bit more springy, a little bit firmer off the face, and a lot faster off the face than what you would expect. Now actually, when going through my fitting, there was a couple of things that I found that maybe if you're watching this and you're thinking of looking at these drivers, this could also help you. Being a better player, I actually preferred the look a little bit more of the JPX 1, not the Select. And actually, from tour feedback as well, it is so that a lot of the tour players are actually going into the JP1 over the Select model. I think it's just, even as it does look a little bit bigger, the profile of it, it still doesn't look overly big. The next thing that really helped me out, I would say, when hitting a lot of shots, one thing that we were finding at the start was it was maybe spinning a little bit too much, so we went back and to from the Select. But ultimately, what I've been able to do and what I've found over the past 6 weeks now of actually using these drivers is very much a shot like that one, in that I've become a lot straighter, and that is because the heads do spin ever so slightly more. And you may think that's a bad thing, because for a long time we were taught low spin, high launch is what we need. But I think for the average golfer, a little bit of backspin, maybe a little bit extra of backspin, as long as you aren't forgoing distance, which you're not because of the nano alloy face, you're still getting good ball speeds. What it still does then is straighten you out a little bit more, so you know that you can get distance while also trying to keep it on the straight and narrow a little bit more, which is massive, especially on those misstruck shots. You might be a golfer who actually doesn't want that spin, and that's where I think going for the fitting is a huge part. Actually spending your hard-earned money, which I'm going to tell you how much these cost in a second, but you might be a player who actually wants to drop your spin, and you might actually find that the JPX Select is a better model for you to just lower it a little bit. I've not seen straight drives like that in ages. So now we know a little bit about those JPX models there. How are they going to stack up against previous models, and in particular my gamer driver, the STX driver, which I've been using for the best part of 2025. Well, I hit some shots down in my studio and I have collected some data, and let's dive into those numbers. Now, as we said, nano alloy is one of the big stories, producing that faster ball speed, and it's done that for me. The JPX 1 was the fastest, the Select being the second fastest, and the STX coming in at last place. I say last place, they are all very, very close together. 165 for the JPX 1, 164 for the Select, and 163 for the STX. So it is a gain, but only marginally. In terms of spin, I did mention that the JPX 1 was spinning a little bit more in testing when I was going through my fittings, and that has been the case again when I've hit these drivers down in the simulator. What we see is that the JPX 1 comes in at 2,960, the Select at 2,429, and the STX at 2,906. So least spinniest, most spinniest, just below. All the clubs swung at a very similar club head speed, 114 for my old gamer, 113 for the Select, and I think that's because I find that a little bit unruly, that driver. I have to feel like I'm trying to manufacture the perfect swing to get the perfect shot, so that cost me a couple of miles an hour going down to 113. But then the JPX 1, because I've got so much trust in it, just because it looks forgiving, looks easy to use, that was the fastest at 115. How does that all stack up though when we get into carry, because that's what we want to see. So the JPX 1 comes in as the longest, 283 yards for that one. I am slightly down, it is just after Christmas, so forgo me a few yards because of the many pigs in blankets. But when it comes to the STX and the JPX 1, the one that I will most likely go into because I find the Select just a little bit too much for me to handle, It's very, very close. 275 yards for the STX, 277 yards for the JPX1. Now, I have had my fitting already for this club, and we were seeing that it was going at 287 out in Atlanta and in my other previous fittings. So hopefully I can get those numbers back up to there. But overall, the tech is doing what it's saying. It is producing a little bit more forgiveness. It is a little bit faster off the face, and it's that tiny little bit longer. Only margins, but that's for you to decide whether you should be investing on those small margins. Now, before I tell you the price of these drivers, one other thing to bear in mind. I think for quite a while Mizuno haven't been known for making maybe the best drivers or being credited as the best driver makers, but I think this model, the JPX1 and the JPX1 Select, could really see them climb that pecking order. Number one, because the retail price is only £529. I actually think they'll go into stores at about $499, so they will come in under what some of the other big competitors will be charging. And also, last year, Marco Penge finished second on the DP World Tour, and he was using a Mizuno driver, and we all know we want to drive it like him. So having that attached to the Mizuno brand and the Mizuno driver just helps pump those standings up, and to follow it up with a driver like this, I think is going to be a great shout, especially with that eye-catching nano alloy face. It's something that I think is going to see Mizuno talked about in the driver spec. Let us know what you think about them. Have you tried them? And why not watch me use some of my other new Mizuno clubs just here in this video?